go ahead and get started here. Just some time. Bring the meeting to order. So let's start off by going around the room with a brief introduction of who you are, and who you represent. Carlos, would you like to start us off?
I'll start. Carlos, transportation planner over at MAPA. I'm Jay, I'm an intern.
Okay.
Jay Harrison, he has last name. City intern with City of Omaha. Okay. It's my right hand man this summer. Tag along. Right guy, City of Omaha, of course.
I'll go back.
No.
You have to, how do I mute? Get the mute.
Oh, it's the YouTube.
Correct. Yeah, man, it's just.
We're on YouTube now.
We are on YouTube.
So can you say no?
So I can just close it, right?
No, I can. Yeah, I have my voice back, so.
Oh, that's convenient. Fixes it.
Thanks.
There we go. We're back. Where were we?
Chris.
Chris Wassmer, City of Omaha.
More State of Nebraska DOT District 2.
Austin Rouser, City of Omaha.
Mike Kleiner, City of William.
Jack Krager, City of Bellevue.
Shady, City of Bellevue.
Eric Williams, Papio NRD.
Matt Dowse, Lewis Public Works.
Derek Miller, City of Omaha.
Todd Fitzer, Douglas County.
Sherry Neighbors, Omaha Metro Transit.
Court Barber, MAPA.
Michael Blank, MAPA.
Jim Warner, Napa.
Gaten Schultz, Federal Highway, Iowa.
Tyler Goodall, Shimmer.
Don't Grady, Keating, Consulting.
Greg Evil, Delbert. Mark Pugh, Shimmer.
Are there others on the call virtually that would like to introduce themselves?
Scott Sewer, Iowa DOT.
Mia Haschenberger, MAPA.
Craig Walker, FHWA, Nebraska.
Dan Sartorius, JO Consulting Group.
Last call for anyone online who would like to introduce themselves. Okay. Well, with that, let's jump into our formal meeting and approval of items. And the first one is the minutes from May 17th. You had a chance to review those. Anybody have any questions and comments, or is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion from Mike, second. Pat. All those in favor of approving the May minutes, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. This month is the election of officers for the fiscal year for 25. So turn that over, I guess, to court probably and make nominations and all that.
Yeah, I can help kind of walk everybody through it. So we'll follow this collection procedure. We'll start off with nominations. You can nominate yourself or you can nominate another member. If you nominate another member, they must be willing. Can't just force people to be the chair or vice chair. So we'll ask them to accept, and then we'll vote, and we'll do the voting in order of nomination. And then we'll basically go through this for chairperson and vice chairperson. And then for each of those, the first person to get a majority vote would just be the chair and then the vice chair. So with that, the floor is open for nominations. That's okay. Todd Fitzer, chairperson. We have one nomination. I'll second the chair.
I will accept that.
He has accepted the nomination. Any other nominations for chairperson? Okay, well, then I would say, so if you are a voting member, I would say go ahead and raise your hand to vote, and I can just count you out, if that's the best. Yeah, so
I am now-
one of the two of you, yeah, it's, I, go ahead.
Okay, I'll take it.
All right. I think we were at 10, so that is it. Yeah. Unanimous, Todd Fitzer will be the chair for fiscal year 2025. Vice chair nominations.
Nominate Mike Kleppner.
The nomination for Mike Kleppner.
On seven. We need a second?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think that's required.
I'll second it if you need it.
Just like this.
Last year.
I know, but it doesn't feel like that one.
You need to come more often.
Well, yes.
All right, not seeing any other nominations. So, if you're a voting member, would you, want to vote for? And unanimous for Mike Kleppner. So the top Mike will serve as chair and vice chair for another year, through the end of, June. Normally, I would say this doesn't go into effect until next month, but there's not really a change in regards, so it doesn't really carry on. That's all I need to thank you.
You are welcome. The next item is item C, and that is update to the bylaws of the Coordinated Transit Committee.
Yeah, I guess I am gonna keep talking. So actually, I'm gonna back it up real quick. So for anybody who's not aware, the Coordinated Transit Committee is a subcommittee of TTAC. TTAC and CTC don't interact all that much, but TTAC does have to play a role whenever CTC wants to make any changes to what they're doing. And that's effectively what's going on here. So with the packet, there was a report as well as the kind of a track changes draft version of the CTC bylaws that went out. I've got a list up on the screen of roughly what we're trying to accomplish. So this was a couple of month process with CTC, especially their chairpersons, and like kind of figuring out where they want to be. For the most part, this is bringing the CTC bylaws in line with the way they've been operating anyway. So they wanted to increase the total number of voting members a few years ago, never quite got to finalizing the bylaws, so that's something that was brought in from a kind of a previous period. They wanted to add the ability to attend meetings virtually, but they don't want to add the ability to vote virtually. It has to do with who maintains their voting status. Is effectively how the committee runs right now. If you miss 3 meetings, your voting privileges are revoked. And they wanted to soften that a little bit, so that they want to be able to attend virtually but not vote virtually. So they want it counted for attendance. I also added, we've added in the ability for the CTC to appoint new members. As it stands today, only the chairperson of TTAC can appoint anybody to the committee officially. That's how it works. That's not how the CTC has been operating. They'll basically just approve new membership according to the restrictions in the bylaws. Otherwise, basically, if you attend 3 meetings, the CTC will vote to add you as a voting committee member. Technically, that's not how it works. Technically, Todd should be approving all new members to the CTC. And they are asking that they be allowed to kind of manage their own membership. The TTAC would still appoint members to CTC if it desires, but it does help them to kind of do their own business without having to bring stuff back to TTAC all the time. And that is how they've been operating. So we're kind of bringing that up to the way that they've been doing business.
And maybe taking a step back, like the CTC is a subcommittee of TTAC. Their function and responsibility is to oversee the coordinated transportation plan for the entire region. So this includes Metro Transit and all the other additional and beyond ADA services that we have throughout the region. They also oversee the 5310 administration, awarding, I guess, what's the proper term? Yes, awarding a 5310 funds and applications.
They act as a selection committee, effectively, sort of like TAPC and PROSCOM.
And so those are their primary functions, looking at how to make better connections of existing and or potential transit for people that have a disability or are older, so over 65 plus. So that's kind of their main goal. The bylaws, I don't remember when we last looked at the bylaws on this thing, but it just seems a little restrictive to an extent. of having to ask permission to add or delete people. We have to keep track of everyone that shows up and then once they show up 3 consecutive meetings, then they have to submit an application to apply to get a voting status. Again, you know, willing to do what needs to be done, but it just seems a little bit too many steps to kind of make that committee or that subcommittee function as it should function. I think the other inherent issue is because we're a little restricted on voting, we do have a good deal of attendance, but the voting numbers aren't just there, if that makes sense. No, we have people that show up, but they're not voting members. We're not assigned a voting membership. And so it makes it difficult for that committee to run their meeting minutes, and sometimes their selection, but we haven't had a selection in a couple of years ago.
And then they would like to tie their quorum to their current membership. So right now they have a maximum membership of 21. There's only about 13 members on the CTC presently, and they've been having trouble meeting their quorum of 7. And they would like to tie it, they would like it to just be 1/3 of membership to a minimum of 5. They haven't actually been able to vote on anything since February. It's been quite a while since they've met quorum. And this would help them both be able to meet quorum going forward, but also add some new members. So they haven't been able to add anybody because they haven't been able to vote on it. So if they were able to replenish their roster, they'd have a better time actually meeting quorum. And then I also clarified how the bylaws should be amended. There's an opportunity. So the way that we're running this amendment is CTC is effectively making a recommendation to be approved by TTAC, and I'm just kind of codifying that within the amendment language. As it stands right now, CTC or the TTAC can just amend or not amend at will. There's not really a formal mechanism for bringing that to TTAC from the CTC. So as I just kind of alluded to, the CTC, they did not have a quorum in June, so there isn't a formal recommendation to TTAC to update these bylaws. But I explicitly asked them to send me any misgivings that any of the members might have. We talked about it during the meeting. It's not required that there be a CTC recommendation. TTAC can change CTC bylaws at will. They're kind of going through a transition phase. They've had new chair people for the last year, and they, as I said, they've been having quorum issues due to low membership. So the staff recommendation is for TTAC to go ahead and approve these bylaws changes, and then I will basically get them to formally bless it at their next meeting. But that is staff's request. And I might open it up if anybody has any questions about these changes or concerns. And
I'll make the motion to make the recommended changes from staff. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
thank you.
That's the end of our action. Go ahead.
Is this one of those where maybe staff that we need to look at the people that are on it and look at alternatives first for memberships on that?
Yeah, so the bylaws do allow them to send alternates. I think that there's been some confusion with some of the newer members who were appointed like within the last year as to whether they could or couldn't vote online, like whether they could actually attend online or vote online. They're in, I would say it's kind of a transition. I would say now that these are approved, we'll meet with them again next month. See if they're gonna have some new applicants for spots on the CTC. I kind of want to see how that goes, and then if they're still having trouble, I'll bring it back to TTAC and I think we can have a more thorough discussion about it. But I think this will go a long way to solving some of their issues, at least in the short term. What are their regular meetings? It's typically the Wednesday before TTAC, but it sort of depends. So for MAPA, this Wednesday's a federal holiday, Juneteenth. So it was last week. It's often the third Wednesday of the month.
Probably not the calendar.
Yeah, maybe. Well, yes, it's on the map. It is on the printed MAPA calendar sheets. Yes, it is.
Give me extras of those.
We do.
I mean, we do.
Vernon probably has some. Anything else on that topic? Item C. Okay. Well, let's move on to recommendations on MAPA, and that's item D, the approval of the amendment to section 5310 of the program management plan.
That's me again.
Popular guys.
I know, I'm gonna keep going too. Well, there'll be a brief intermission with me. So this is another item coming from the CTC. This one, however, this document is decided on by the board, so this will be a TTAC recommendation to the board of directors, and ultimately our board will decide whether to amend this. It's a fairly small change. The City of Council Bluffs requested that we add the ability to change the level of federal participation for when they're purchasing vehicles for ADA, Americans with Disability Act compliance service. So as it stands right now, our program management plan just basically has two tiers. You can either do 80-20 on vehicles or 50-50 on operations. Because the City of Council Bluffs is operating service for compliance with ADA, they can get 85% and 15% local match, 85% federal participation. This won't actually change any of the current program awards. A lot of those awards are worse than 80-20 currently because the 5310 program got maxed out with all of the vehicle cost increases during the pandemic. Some of those vehicles went from being about 70,000 each to over 120,000 each. They're very expensive now, and the 5310 program just hasn't kept up. But it may impact future project selection. Effectively, the City of Council Bluffs could request a better rate when they're trying to purchase vehicles. Ultimately, this will come back with recommendations from the CTC when we do another call for projects. So it doesn't really change anything presently, but it could allow City of Council Bluffs to basically go in for a better rate. The CTC could recommend an award at 80-20. It's not like it basically just gives the CTC the option of recommending 85% participation. Again, CTC did not have a quorum, so they're not recommending this officially. No one had any misgivings at the meeting, and I didn't hear anything subsequently. So staff is recommending that TTAC make a recommendation to the board to approve this amendment to the program management.
Any questions or items for discussion on? Any motion for approval? Or do you?
Yes, this would be a recommend, just like it would be for an amendment to the tip. We're asking for a.
And we're still in action.
Yep.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this? Krista, I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign? Okay, thank you, passport. Item E, Michael Blank, for amendment 6.
Yep. So to change it to the tip for amendment 6. First one is from the City Council Bluffs with the CEPEL study. The original funding we put there for STBG was a estimate previously before project selection from the mini grant committee. Now that we have the official award approved from the mini grant committee, which was $350,000, we've now updated the tip to show that amount since they are planning to use that within this fiscal year. The second item is from IODOT, which is an additional project that they are going to be doing within this fiscal year that they have added to the tip so that it's concurrent with the tip. Questions?
Okay, is there a motion to approve? I make a motion.
Second.
First by Mike, second by Krista, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Okay, the last item we have for an action item is the approval of the tip.
And I'm back. All right, so with the packet, I included a link to the final version of the TIP database. I say final, even though we're still making some changes to it. I'm still getting some kind of last minute project information in. I just heard yesterday Iowa DOT needs to make an adjustment based on that TIP amendment. They're gonna be, that's going into 24 and come out of 25, things like that. We'll still be doing some cleanup, and of course, you know, we're 6 amendments in now, so we'll be amending the program throughout the next federal fiscal year as well. But for the most part, at least, you know, all of the newly approved STBG, TAP, and CRP awards are bundled up into the program, and we are fiscally constrained through 2030. I've got it here. I'm looking it up. It won't let me out. Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, I'm hitting escape, we're getting
There we go.
way into there we go. This PC.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah, look.
All right, here we go. I'm just gonna scroll down into the actual, well, now, see, now I'm covering the top. All right. We'll start off with Iowa STBG. Yeah, so through 2030, we intend to open up another call for projects this fall, particularly for the Iowa side. We are carrying a very large balance compared to our spending authorities. We get about $2.5 million each year on the Iowa side for STBG, and we'll be up to, yeah, you know, $17.5 million at the end of the program. So we're going to be working with the Iowa side partners to see if we can't fill that program in a little bit better. On the Nebraska STBG side, we will not have that issue. Just did a call for projects and filled it in pretty well. We dipped down pretty low in 2028. We gained a little bit of a balance by 2030, but most of that will be chewed up by 168th Street, which will be programmed in 2031 in the 2026 program. It's kind of been set aside because it didn't quite fit in the program. On Iowa TAP, the balance doesn't get too big at the end of 2030. There's a couple of projects that will either go in 25 or 26 that should use up a lot of the balance that exists now. Nebraska TAP, we are thinking about opening another call for projects for Nebraska TAP this fall because we focused a lot of the project applications we received into the carbon reduction program on the Nebraska side in order to spend down the early balance, which is going to lapse soon, and there'll be more about that later on in this meeting. Iowa carbon reduction program, we currently don't have any projects programmed. We didn't get any applications on the Iowa side other than the Pell study under the mini grant program. So this will likely include a call for projects this fall for Iowa CRP as well. Nebraska CRP, we spend it down pretty well once we get into 2027 and then the balance begins to build again. We haven't decided if we'll open a call for projects specifically for this. It may depend on what happens with our discussion with NDOT regarding CMAQ, so I guess stay tuned on that. Besides all of that, let me get back up to where we were in the presentation. I do want to kind of go over a couple of the other pieces. We are continuing to update some of the community project funding awards, the stuff that comes to basically the earmark funding. I want to make sure I get all of those captured. Might not get all of them in before next Thursday when the board approves the TIP, but we can work those in with amendments in the fall. So don't get too upset if you miss next week's deadline, but NDOT has been on us about making sure that we get these programmed appropriately because the funding does need to be spent by 2027. I'm sure everybody's aware of that, but yeah, if we can get your 530 forms in for those as soon as possible, that would be great. We'll get the process kicked off with NDOT. Other than that, that's basically the final tip. Does anybody have any questions about the final 2025 program?
Seeing no questions, Is there a motion to approve the tip?
Motion to approve.
One second. Got a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
All right, now, I jumped the gun earlier, now we're going to discussion. So court is gonna keep the floor, so maybe present process pilot, the 4 Ps.
Yep.
Prioritization of the pilot program.
I don't know why they made it. We're gonna do this again. So in a moment here, we're gonna use, we've done this before, we're gonna use Mentimeter to, ask you a few questions, but not quite yet. First, I want to kind of get into some of the background, just kind of remind everybody where we are with this. We've been bringing it back to you, last few months. This was the, $2 million, program that MAPA applied for in May. I think it was due like early May. We kind of talked about this a little bit at TAPC and PROSCOM, and the general consensus was that we need to have these conversations at TTAC, and you talking about kind of what MAPA's kind of intentions are and what we're trying to accomplish with all of this and what the process will ultimately look like. Oh wait, hang on a second. Yeah, so what we kind of want to get at is what MAPA's goal is we want to make the most of our regional resources and increase our competitiveness kind of on the federal level. We're going after discretionary funding, stuff that we can bring in that's over and above the apportionments that we get, because the apportionment that we get is not sufficient to meet all of the needs in the region. So the first question that I have for everybody, and once you get logged in, it'll be the same for each of the questions. I think I have 4 questions that I'm gonna ask everybody, but if you would, on your mobile device, go to menti.com. And I would appreciate it if only voting members of TTAC join in. I would say, it's not an action item, but I would say if you're a jurisdiction with voting members on TTAC. So I would say, I don't really have an issue with both Krista and Brian go ahead and vote in this. That's perfectly fine. It's not an action item, so I think you can both participate. If you are a member jurisdiction, please go ahead and participate. I'll keep it as simple as that. And I think that would apply to you. Well, yeah, the feds aren't technically. This is just part of our green sea process. Yeah, just no bets. Yeah. Got about 5 and 6. Giving us the thumbs up. You can see. That's probably about it. Intends about what we have. Okay, so yeah, we're generally, it seems like we think we're doing pretty well, maybe a little lighter on the data side, is kind of what I'm picking up. So this is out of 5, with 5 being perfectly sufficient and 1 being, one being insufficient. And data is a big piece of what we want to get better at, and that was a big thing that we put in the application when we submitted it, is that we want to be better about collecting data and doing a better job of analyzing that data. But generally, it sounds like we think that on the process side and the public input side that we're doing pretty well. And we're sort of middle of the road, a little bit higher than I guess is what I'm picking up out of this. Does anybody want to expand on their thoughts about, I guess, this aspect of kind of setting priorities? And I'm very interested in knowing about your jurisdictions, your organization's process as well. Because like, when we're thinking about some of this, when we were putting the application in, we were thinking that, I mean, this could be helpful for the individual jurisdictions as well. We build a tool for prioritizing, basically for infrastructure investment, that this wouldn't just be something that we could use for STBG and town and regional project selection, but this could be tweaked, you could set parameters and all that kind of stuff, and use this for your own, internal jurisdiction prioritization as well, for developing CIPs, that kind of thing. So give you kind of an overview of what we kind of baked into the applications. We were taking this three-legged stool concept that was in MTIS, that you've got your local system, you've got a state system, you also have a transit system, which filters down to who's actually controlling those programs, who owns it. And then we've got common objectives, but it's kind of difficult to cross-compare all of those things. I'd like to get some way of cross-comparing out of this process, but as I talk to people who kind of try to do that, I get it's difficult to actually come up with a solid methodology to cross-compare, especially when we're talking about public transportation, active transportation, and what I guess we could say like traditional automobile transportation. But this is sort of the basis for what we were trying to put together, kind of coming out of what we did at MTIS. So what we ultimately developed and the way we presented this to USDOT in our application was that we would have a kind of a 4-tier approach. So we start off with kind of a data-driven scoring, and I'm going to get into each of the tiers in a moment. But basically, we're going from does the project solve a problem? Then we go into a readiness screen, which is can we do this? Like, is this feasible? We've got project engagement, kind of like public input. Should we do this? And then the actual implementation and funding alignment. So how do we do it? How do we pay for it? So the very first piece would be that data-driven scoring. And the way we see this operating in the future, and all of this is, none of this stuff is actually set in stone. All of this will be developed should we get the award that we apply for. So none of this is just kind of the concept that we present to the USDOT. But we would basically take a lot of the stuff that we're already looking at in our project selection process. We would like to do it a little bit earlier and get this into the long-range transportation plan, and then have that filtered down into the tip, and kind of make that transition a little more seamless. So that's kind of how we see it going. And I'm about to ask you all another question with Menti. And what I would like to know is basically answer this question, answer this statement. I would like a more detailed discussion about, and you can basically say whether you feel like we need to discuss this item more, or we don't really need to go into these items. And I'll ask this about the next tier as well.
Did you change it yet? Or
it should have changed on your device. Is it coming up for folks? Like I need a Jeopardy theme on or something. Okay. So it's this one, I think this one's just out of 3. So it's not quite as, but still fairly middle of the road. It sounds like very similar throughout, where there seems to be like, yeah, we feel like there needs to be some discussion, but maybe not, there's nothing that really stands out. Safety, safety is gonna be a big topic. We're in the middle of creating our comprehensive safety action plan, which is another federal aid study that will kind of help us access safe streets and roads for all funds, which I mean, I think that conversation is gonna happen and just be kind of a tangent to what we're talking about here. But this is helpful. I think that means we probably need to have a little bit of conversation about each of these, but maybe not super intense. Does anybody have any specific feedback on any of these that they want to talk about right now?
The only thing I want to say is that I think it's healthy for this group that as these things come into play and we grade things, that there's always open discussion and explanations of anything that change, the opportunity for people to voice concerns, things like that. I think it's really important that this remain an open topic.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think MAPA feels differently about that. I think that's I think there'll always be an opportunity to kind of adjust and tweak when it comes to developing the program each year. And I don't think we have any desire to see that change.
And just for the record, I wasn't suggesting that anybody's asked for it to change or has been closed-minded. I just want to keep that level of transparency.
Yeah, yep, I appreciate it. Okay, and then this is kind of tier 2 would be a readiness screen where we actually go in and do the cost assessment of, like what, like kind of looking at a benefit cost ratio. What are the constraints? Is it actually constructible? Is there right-of-way issues? Is this going to be a big MAPA issue? Where is the project? Like, is it already finished MAPA? Is it kind of well positioned to go after a discretionary award? That sort of things. It's kind of finding out where the project is and if it's ready to move forward. So basically, the way we see this is we do that initial screening for the long range plan. And then this is where we would start moving it into the tip. So we would, as we get closer to the project being ready to construct, we would say, all right, it's time to match this with some federal aid. Let's do that. Let's find a program for it and move it into the tip. The third question, basically the same thing. If you have any, if you want to have a further, more detailed discussion about any of these items that would exist on tier 2. So the benefit cost ratio piece stands out pretty strongly. Does anybody have anything they want to pull out and discuss presently? Okay, well, we'll probably look at the project cost assessment and the benefit cost ratio screening as probably look at those as specific topics for a future meeting. We're anticipating that we'll know something from USDOT this fall. So I think we're going to keep bringing this back and just kind of talking through how we want to approach this should we receive an award. Okay, and then tier 3 would be project engagement and public input. So this we saw this as kind of building on work with local community groups. This would effectively take the place of the application stage comment period. So whenever we go through the project selection process, like this latest call for projects, for example, the month of February, we basically take all the applications, we put a summary of that online and let the public give us comments. This would effectively take the place of that comment period. So as we've gone through and done the initial screening and then basically the project readiness screening in tier 2, we take those projects that we've decided that we probably want to move forward with, get public input, and then we would take those to the selection committees, just kind of as we normally would. And then finally, we take all of that information and align it to basically the best way to implement that from a funding standpoint. When we're talking about here in the region, we'll be looking at whether it fits best under regional federal aid or discretionary funds, other financing options, and then also we've been working with NDOT on how do they fit into this picture with things like potential this regional infrastructure accelerator that they've been talking about. I think this will all be kind of wrapped up in it, but this is kind of the end goal, is we go through this process and our hope is that it would set us up better to be able to access additional funding options over and above what we have in the region today. So what we see is coming out of this project, what we're really getting for the $2 million that we're asking for from USDOT is we would have some kind of web-based prioritization tool, which I kind of mentioned earlier. An external dashboard, so you can kind of go in there and see what the projects are. Depending on how we end up having it set up, that could just end up being what the tip is. It's just kind of, it's a database that shows kind of our prioritized projects, and it's sort of like it's like taking the NAC database that we have today and making it a little bit more, I guess, easier to understand. Also, there'd be a way for project sponsors to get in there and give us feedback and all that kind of stuff. We've had those requests in the past where people have been interested in being able to kind of access the tips kind of on a different level when they're a project sponsor with a federal aid project that's in the program today. Then basically just documentation on the process itself, and finally a pilot deployment. So we don't actually see this really going into effect fully until we do our long-range transportation plan in 2030. So we're looking pretty far out, because it's going to take us a few years to actually put this together if we do. But there'll probably be a pilot deployment for like the 27 or 28 tip. So for a couple of tips in the future. So we'll continue to use the project selection process we established last year for probably a couple, 2-3 more tips before we actually get into a pilot deployment for this, depending on how. But that's just kind of how we've envisioned it so far. Well, actually, before I move ahead into the last couple of Menti questions, does anybody have any thoughts right now? I don't skip over anybody if anybody's got any questions or comments or anything like that. All right, and I've got 2 more questions. One is, what aspects of all of this do you think that we should focus on with this group over the next few months? That's just about everybody. So I think we'll be talking a lot about the actual data and scoring criteria. And then I think the biggest thing that I can kind of prime that conversation with is that would be decided that would be decided using kind of this body during the development of that project. So should we get an award and we accept the award, all of that, the data and scoring criteria that we would ultimately use will be, all of that stuff will be run through TTAC. And then last thing is there anything else that we should know? We can just like enter stuff in and we'll take a look at it. I don't know, maybe just a minute or so to put some stuff in, and you can also feel free to send me an email, give me a call or anything like that. Kind of chat about any concerns anybody has. And if you have any of those concerns right now, one of the things that we were trying to do with this was actually get some mouths moving. We're always a little concerned when we hear anything on this from this group. We've heard some, you know, like generally what MAPA has heard is, you know, we're not really sure if we should be diving into changing the process that we have. There we go. Donuts are always appreciated. All right. Okay. Okay. It's anonymous. You don't have to say it. If more people want donuts, go ahead and put that response in.
Court, back to the tip discussion we had earlier,
Yes,
we've talked about prioritization, but how about project initiation? And I guess Iowa feds are here, but no one else is from Iowa, right? I mean, I guess the only reason
Scott was on.
oh, online, okay, great.
Iowa DOTs.
Yeah, and I guess that was the area where, is there something that can be done to help initiate projects? Because in a couple of areas, the project application, TAP and CRP in particular is relatively low. And we kind of struggled through this when the TAP committee reviewed TAP versus CRP project applicants, and we didn't have a lot. And looking forward, it seems like there might be a need to increase applications initially. So the prioritization isn't quite as much the problem as just, do we have projects that we think are eligible and are getting submitted? And so I don't know how to include that in a prioritization process, but is that part of what this would assist with, is identifying things that could be eligible?
Yeah.
Because that is a different kind of challenge. Is you highlighted, we had to shift funding or specifically prioritize projects that were CRP eligible because there was funding that was set to expire. And so we prioritized that funding rather than use of the TAP funding. That's a strange kind of problem to encounter. And as we look through the next 5 years, those balances grow even more than they are currently.
So something else that we want to do with this process is we want to do a better job of capturing what all the jurisdictions are trying to do, you know, over the next 5, 10, 20 years. Because one of the issues that we end up having is, and this is just kind of like an internal MAPA, like sometimes we just feel like we're doing busy work when it comes to making sure that the TIP and the LRTP are kind of lined up. Is that we'd like to do a better job at the long range transportation plan level of making sure that we're capturing what's going to be happening at least over the next 10 years. And what often ends up happening is we have a bunch of projects in there, but then there's a whole bunch of new stuff that comes up just within the next 3 to 5 years that then has to be amended into the LRTP. And we get it, like stuff changes and things shift, and we're not necessarily saying that that's a problem, but yeah, like we would like to do a better job of collecting what everybody's thinking and what all of the different jurisdictions are planning on doing. And I think that's part of it, because if we have a better idea of what everybody's doing, even if you're not necessarily planning on going after a federal award, there may be some things that stand out that MAPA could help and say, like, you know, it would be a really good idea if you apply for federal aid for this project. And we'd like to be able to find those things and make sure that we're trying to make the most of the regional resources that we have and leverage those to go after additional funding.
And I don't mean to put the Iowa side on blast too much, but the other one that was noticeable was the Iowa name program. You highlighted it.
Right, yes.
There is
and we
complication of expending those funds by the out years. That budget was relatively large.
We've had conversations with Iowa DOT. We're still we're still working through some of that stuff, but yeah, we are having conversations with the Iowa side partners as well as Iowa DOT on how best to move forward there. So that is, we recognize that issue, there's just, it's kind of tricky.
Sounds good, nice.
Well, okay. Anything else, or shall we move ahead? Thank you, everybody, for participating. I know that this has been kind of, I don't know if trying is the right word, but MAPA is very interested in pursuing this project. We feel like we can do a lot of good for the region with it, especially with trying to go after additional federal aid, but I know there are some concerns around how exactly we're going to make this happen and who's going to be at the table, but we want to bring this group along with us, and that's my goal at least. I want to see everybody at the table, and I want to have some good conversations about it. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to the actual presentation and Amazon. Yes, I can. One more time. Yeah. All right, some last minute edits. Yeah.
All right. Yep. Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is just a quick update on our progress towards our safety targets for 2023. Just as a quick reminder, we set targets for 5 measures. These are federal performance measures. We choose to set these separate from the state, just acknowledging that our region kind of sees safety, a different set of safety problems, and we made it a priority. This in particular is important now that we're doing our first streets and roads for all planning. So the measures themselves are 5-year rolling averages. You'll see in the graphs here what we experienced as far as numbers, but the measure is what we track to. You'll see a linear fit line for the 5-year. That's a traditional trend. You'll also see the targets that are set. That's based upon a policy, a decision that we established a couple of years ago when we set our goal to get to 0 fatalities and serious injuries by 2040. And when you do see rate, that's 100 million miles traveled. So this is our status right now for number of fatalities. The Nebraska fatality data is preliminary for 2023. And you can see, although we are 5-year rolling average, we do have a decreasing number in the measure. We do have an uptick year over year from 2021 through 23, notwithstanding the kind of bad years we had in 2019 and 2020. So we are still below our baseline and below our projection for 2023. The targets that we set in February are actually for 2020. Any questions on the graph and setup? We'll go through these remaining measures. So fatality rates, the traffic volumes for 2023 are based upon a prediction, basically 1% increase from 2022. And that's generally in line with what we saw from Iowa and Nebraska DOT data, but the actual numbers are not yet set for those volumes. So that could change slightly. Again, they pretty much track with the fatalities. We do see that uptick in fatality rate across the region, still below baseline and below our target.
And sorry, can you remind us the rate here is fatality per BMT?
It is per 100 million. Yeah, yep.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Okay, and serious injuries, and I think this is where I'll kind of note some differences. We had seen really since we've been setting targets and talking about serious injuries, a continued decrease in the number. We do see a slight uptick in the overall number, and that's that blue column there for serious injuries. And this is all users. We're keeping ourselves again below the baseline of the target, but usually when I present on this would be the one we weren't worried about, but this is the one that kind of does move back up. Now, from our trend to 2040, this was the one that was easier to kind of project to see us getting to that because we had seen that reduction in serious injuries. So we're, I guess, a little bit closer to that target in our curve as we set them. And similarly, really seeing that same trend as with the fatality rate for serious injuries. Okay, and this is the final one, and I would say probably the most concerning and, you know, something that we're continuing to work on. These are non-motorist fatal serious injuries. This one's harder to measure, harder to get a handle on because we're not looking at a corresponding rates. So we know what we know as far as the instances of fatal and serious injuries. Looking always, of course, to find more data to talk about how many users on the roadway are in this instance and kind of where these issues are, but we do see in this case the number jumping up and we're just kind of approaching our projection for 2023. So yes, as an advertisement, there are things that we're working on. Both Iowa DOT and Nebraska DOT have funding sources. Nebraska is working on a program for local use of HSIP for vulnerable road users, and both of the departments of transportation has completed vulnerable road user safety assessments as well. So while we haven't gone and implemented any of those projects through those resources, we do have those coming up in future years, along with the work that we're doing for Safe Streets and Roads for All. And again, that can get at all of these numbers. So generally, we did meet the target and better than baseline on all those numbers. The one that kind of creeping back up again and getting a little bit closer are the serious injuries and those non-motorized fatal and serious injuries, and in particular, we'll have to make a pretty good reduction for serious injuries to meet our targets in 2024. I think that's all that I have. Any questions on the update on safety targets? All right, thank you.
So we have a new segment here in our discussion items. If there's any members here, and I don't see any, but any members of the public that would like an opportunity to speak or jump in. I'm not ruling out you consultants as being members of the public. I understand that you are, but it's not new faces. So, but if there's anything, this is the opportunity for anybody to speak about anything they'd like. Yeah.
But he's a member of the CTC. Oh, I see. She had a comment from the during the PPP discussion about equity and prioritization. Yep. But other than that, I was her post meeting. Yep, I don't see it.
Okay. So we'll jump into member agency updates. I guess I'll just maybe start back in that corner. So I'm not looking at you necessarily, Krista, but let's start up that direction.
Huh? Your voice is back. I guess, so we are working on getting eBuilder up and running. If for consultants, if you have access to it and you are getting a large amount of notifications and you shouldn't be, let us know. We're still working out a lot of kinks. So with that, and then on the project side, the Midtown Medical Bikeway RFP will be coming out soon. We're working on finalizing the program agreement for that, and I think that is the only upcoming project. The RFP.
Just a clarification, that name is Midtown Medical Bikeway. Can you remind us which one specific that is?
That is the UNMC.
And that is both sides?
Saddle Creek.
It's Saddle Creek and Lebanon, and the connection between the two.
Great, thanks.
I think that's all.
Okay. Let's see, we got the Platte River Bridge Trail. Bridge is done, trail is done. And they're putting in the ornamental handrail and fence. So we should be wrapping it up shortly. North Freeway, Hamilton to Fort. Hamilton Street is closed, it'll be closed to put the new deck on. Right now, southbound from Benny to Hamilton has been overlaid and done. We still got more to do on that, but that is done from Benny to Hamilton, not southbound. Northbound is done from Benny to Fort. So we'll get back in there and finish that, not during the College Road Series, so we'll pick up again next week. Let's see. Right now, we got Ames Street down 2 lanes head to head on the north half, and we're working on the south half. Get that done, we'll switch it. Highway 50, 370 to L Street. That's ongoing. They pretty much finished that bridge in Miller over the creek. They got a few more things to do. We end up overlaying it eventually with asphalt. We haven't got to that point yet. I can see why, because we've got other 2 bridges to do. I'm sure they'll do them all at once. We've torn up Miller Ave from
Yeah, thanks a lot.
we tore it up and started raining.
I also noticed that.
Yeah, okay. So we're chugging away on that. I-80 60th to 24th, it's underway tonight, work. Mill and overlay, deck repairs on the bridges. I don't know if we're going over the 60th Street Bridge. That's all deck repair. I don't know why you didn't tear the whole thing off. 192nd Dodge underway. They're starting to put down base on the ramps. They'll be working where they can. We still got a lot of utilities underneath that are still getting moved out of the way. The I-80 Mahoney Park to 370, the cable guardrail in the median, that's ongoing. They started out the river and working east. Let's see, Highway 275, Maple Street to Douglas County line, that's underway. I think we're about halfway done on the south half, and they're working on the north half. But right now, that's pavement repair. Fort Calhoun, I don't even know, I mentioned this last time. I went through there yesterday and pretty much we had pavement repair, that's done. They had to put down the first leveling course, fiberglass mats down. And yesterday when I drove through, the southbound was done and the northbound was halfway done. And I'm sure that they must have finished it last night. I doubt if they're gonna come back, they got all the equipment and trucks there. We had some crack sealing on the interstate, that's postponed until after the series. We got a new one starting Monday. Highway 6, Harrison Street to Dodge Street. It's pavement repair will be night work. Will be shipped in shoulder work, so that starts Monday. And that's all that.
Our federal projects under construction right now, going really well. We're just seeing streets coming along next, the Baby Bob, it's a little bit ahead of schedule. Doing a good job out there. We've got 48 in queue that's tore up under construction. Well, we're finally about to wrap up 8th Street. 72nd D, obviously we gotta have that bridge gone. We've got a lot of underground substructure going on right now, so that's going as planned. We just had our SSO agreement with NDOT get approved at City Council last week. So that's moving forward. The streetcar, obviously, we had a press conference on streetcar earlier this week, so a bit of a buzz about that.
As far as that projects go, got the final agreements for the underpass and 370 foot trail, so that one should get going steady on design. Just got the scoping done on the first phase of 6th Street agreements done, so hopefully that gets I have a PCM meeting next week on that one. We submitted an application for Schram Road, the gravel portion to be paved. pretty much told that it should be funded, so I programmed that one. With 5:30, hopefully that goes through sooner rather than later, just so I can get moving. Hopefully the second phase of 6th Street, I'll submit another 5:30 on that next week, moving on that, so I think I'll have 4 projects in the number. Otherwise, nothing's great.
So our South 36th Street Phase 2 project was bid. It's supposed to start in August. That'd be from Sheridan down to Platteview Road. That should start in August. We have a 5:30 going in for the 36th Street North from Highway 370 Phase 1. So that should be coming in the next couple of weeks. Other than that, we have several small concrete projects, overlay projects happening throughout the city. That's all we got.
Great. So in addition to the Platte River Bridge Trail, the Elkhorn River Trail Bridge is in early phases, but the consultant is here. Did you want to offer a comment about that survey work? We did kind of an interesting technical thing and asked for a change, but can you talk a little bit about the new type of survey we did in the river?
Yeah, we kind of launched into some new technology from surveying, using a miniature boat drone, and we're able to sonar survey underwater banks, and also we were able to, with Eric's project, create significant cost savings on the survey for the project, primarily from H&H issues, among other things. So we're excited about the new technology, looking forward to using on a lot of other projects. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I asked for the update, is that we had anticipated kind of an in-person survey and moved to the technological solution that showed cost and timeline savings, and that showed a DDEC within DOT, well, the documents process. But if you're doing things in and around water and you need survey information, if there is a new process that seems to have shown very positive results for us. So potential bridge work, anything like that, I'd say check out the new tech available. Yeah, great success with it on this project. Very excited about what that can do in the future as well. That's it for now.
We opened 4th Street last Friday, near 180th Street, finally, several weeks late because all the rain we've had. Our 2 major projects that we've got going on have again also been delayed by rain, specifically 168th and State. There's so much cut out there. There's just, everything's dirt right now. We're waiting on OPPD out there. 222nd and Q, that roundabout is all poured for those of you that may or may not have been out there or check the cameras. The roundabout itself is in place, working on the connection to the north. Again, waiting on OPPD to move some utilities there so that we can start making those connections. Those are our major projects.
At Metro, we are very, very close to signing a contract for new buses finally. 26 new buses, although it will be another year and a half before they're manufactured. They'll be on their way at least. And I think I mentioned before, we are going to have a lot of construction around this area starting mid-July. So by the time we have our next meeting, they should be working on the west parking lot. So there might be some entrances closed temporarily for the next few months.
How many total buses do
We have about 113 buses. Our normal pullout is in the upper 70s, lower 80s.
What's the average age?
Average age?
Buses.
Yeah.
Man.
Gotta keep this PC from an HR standpoint.
I think you were the only one that wasn't PC there.
Yeah, I think I already said I was old at the very start of the
That's a good question. We have a lot of buses that have met their useful life, which is 12 years or 500,000 miles, which will be traded in when these new ones come. So I would say the average age is probably 9 to 10 years, but I want to double check that.
No, I didn't even know, it's something new for me, because I didn't know that was the typical lifespan was.
Yes, and if we have to, for some reason, take them out of service before that, we do have to refund FTA for the portion of the useful life that's remaining, so we try to keep them going for at least that amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
On the new bus purchase, can you, isn't the fuel type used there, are those all standard or?
It's gonna be a combination of CNG and clean diesel, and then also a combination of sizes, 35-foot and 40-foot.
Okay, because there was a TAP application for electrical infrastructure upgrade for future electric buses, but
Yes.
that's not included in the current order, that would be a part of a potential future.
Not in this current order, yes.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, but that application is it's under approval right now with FTA, so the programming.
When MAPA has anything right here, I think we're gonna have something in a moment. As far as member agency updates, I think, but we have some additional business.
Well, now we're all like, we debated. What's next? Yeah. Additional business, time permitting, and I think we have time.
Hey, Todd, can I give an update on Iowa DOT?
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
So last week we had our commission tour and our commission meeting held at the not at the Mid-America Center. It was at the hotel, the Courtyard. And then we actually had our ribbon cutting for the Council Interstate, even though we've got one piece left on the Madison Avenue project that we are currently working on. Very well attended. Both directors for the Iowa DOT and the Nebraska DOT were present, as well as both lieutenant governors for both states. So very well attended. Everything turned out really well. Just wanted to update everybody on that.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, is there, I did jump ahead, is there any additional member agency updates? Is everybody that wants to say something, said something? Okay, now we will move to item K, additional business.
I'll take this one. So we are currently working with Nebraska DOT. Obviously, we have this concern with this carbon reduction program. The original funds were originally placed out in 2022. That funding had a special lapse or close that is coming up. So the first round of funds that were released in 2022 are going to be lapsing in 2025. So at the end of the federal fiscal year 25, if those funds are not spent, they become reauthorized, I guess, or de-obligated. I guess that's the term.
But yeah, they're back in the pool.
And so with that, we are working with MDOT to look at how we could preserve those funds and extend the timeline of obligating some of these funds. We're thinking of converting some of our CRP funding within this region to something that is a little bit more flexible in the congestion mitigation air quality. We're having those conversations with the state at this time. We have concerns initially about if every project is eligible. So things that were eligible in CRP may not necessarily be eligible in CMAC. So we're checking, dotting our I's before we make a move and swap out the funds. I think the initial project that we have on the Nebraska side would be a signal enhancement. One of the tried and true methods that we use CRP and or CMAC. So we're having conversations. We'll keep you posted as those go through. Questions, concerns?
So the mechanism there is that NDOT would then spend them as CRP?
Correct. Within the MAPA region.
And does NDOT have projects identified that are CRP eligible, they would direct those funds toward?
Broadly. So they have a carbon reduction plan, is that what it's called? So yeah, carbon reduction plan. that kind of lists what the potential projects could be, but I don't think it has anything specific, at least not specific in this region, but I'd have to double check.
But they would then be able to spend it before the lapse timeline.
Yes.
Yeah, because in the TAP committee, we talked about which projects could be prioritized and rapid deployments.
Yeah.
And signal upgrade phase Y, Omaha, is that right?
Yeah, that's phase Y is kind of a placeholder name. I mean, the idea was, we've got some projects, we're trying to build 2 projects a year, so we could potentially swap the current CMAQ funding that we have identified in phase C2, E1 with this, and, you know, it's because it's already designed, it's ready to go, so I think that's part of the discussion.
It very much simplifies things for those projects because they're already using CMAQ, they're already underway. So I think at the very least, we would probably go ahead and swap for that. Then we're just gonna continue the discussion of NDOT about how far we want to go.
There's 2 projects in the TIP called phase X and phase Y.
Yeah.
Those are gonna be, I guess, once the TIP gets approved by the MAPA board and it becomes official that we've been awarded CRP funds, we'll rename those from X and Y to F1, F2, whatever project makes sense to get the money spent. We wanted to be flexible when we applied because we didn't know when the money was actually gonna be available relative to what project we're gonna be building that year, so. So there'll probably be a TIP amendment in the next couple of months to address the name change and the funding spot, I would guess, so. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, but for the TIP table that is about to be approved, the early year expenditures from the TAP, any Nebraska TAP program were only the signal phase, right? And you were talking about whether or not other projects in the future might be eligible, that was still under analysis, but we're not currently at risk of losing that funding if they are not eligible CMAQ, right? I guess that's the discussion that's ongoing.
Yes, what do we say about that?
I think it's gonna depend on NDOT basically saying, we're pretty sure that all of the stuff is eligible, so we don't, but we do want NDOT to kind of confirm that is the case, but our reading of, you know, what is CMAQ eligible, some of it's a little, in my opinion, a little vague, so I wanna just make sure, but yeah, effectively, that's, it sort of depends on kind of a project by project basis too, because one of the things with at least what we have programmed in CRP, there's the Metro Transit electrical upgrades, and that will need to be transferred to FTA, because Metro will basically administer all that, it won't go through NDOT. And that could present a challenge, I don't know, but that's one of the questions I want to pose to NDOT, does it really matter if you, because then they would have to flex CMAQ, right, too, and you know, is there a substantial difference between flexing CMAQ versus CRP? I don't know, probably not, but that is also a question.
Okay, well, if there's updates that can be provided to the TAP committee, I think that would be helpful, because if there's gonna be another call for projects at the end of the year, I think people potentially putting things together, and this goes back to my comment earlier about not just prioritization, but identification of eligible projects as a valuable part of this, because if we didn't have enough projects and now we're running into constraint on the funding, and we aren't gonna get it used as we thought we might, that's why getting more projects into the next TIP in the out years is gonna be important, so update to the committee would be appreciated. And then if anyone from the TAP committee could participate in the discussion, if that would be helpful, please let us know. Be glad to do that, just to make sure that we understand where the funding is getting used, so that during the next selection process, we are aware of where we might be in future years.
And these discussions don't remove the total amount, if that makes sense. So whatever we have in CRP is gonna be matched 1-to-1 to CMAQ. It's just on the back end, the flavor and the color of the money that we program, and the eligibility of how long we have to spend it would impact everyone else out here. But for us, this is more kind of an administrative function of which funding source we're going to use for it. But yes, duly noted, and we'll keep you posted as we go.
Thanks.
So any other additional business?
It's that time of year again. I got one more. So we're also talking with NDOT regarding August redistribution. For those that don't know, this is an annual process where FHWA looks for funds that are not spent and redistributes them throughout the country. NDOT is anticipating that there will be unobligated funds from other states, not NDOT. And we anticipate to be working with them to select or figure out what projects within our metro region are A, eligible, or B, able to be spent before end of September. I don't have a final number. I think go one more slide. Yeah, so basic conditions are, it must be in the tip. So if it's not in the tip, then most likely it will not be funded. Two, we have traditionally used AC funding for this. The funds are eligible for an FTA flex. So that's something else that we may need to talk about. We're still coordinating with NDOT to find out more, how much is anticipated, what is gonna be the regional impact to us. I think the last time we did this was last year and we received $18 million that were used on previously identified resurfacing projects in the city. So just keeping everyone updated. There'll be more information, and with a short timeline, there'll be quick actions and quick movements that we're gonna have to take to get to Easter. That's all.
I have one thing real quick, it's not so timely anymore because I missed last month's meeting, but when the tornado hit in April, I got a call within 2 hours of that event happening. I was at the police command post trying to organize searches, and we had all of our snow plows pushing trees off the road. And I got a call from Director Stubing saying, hey, we didn't get hit that hard. If you need anything, let us know. And throughout the next week, I had a couple other calls from people in the city of Omaha offering help, coordinating things, and it was just kind of a reminder that we're really a great community and people have their backs and gave me a lot of peace of mind. And so I just want to share that. With that, if there is no additional business, is there a call for adjournment?
Make a motion.
Second that, all in favor, say aye. Anybody who's opposed may stay.